All right, welcome to the Sunday night live stream, something I call Sunday Night Potluck. Glad to have you here. It is Sunday, June 28th. It's hard to imagine that June has already gone by. I don't know what's happening to this year. I really need to slow down. I had hoped to be a little further along in my book writing project than I am right now, but I am going to be taking a little time off from the main podcast and trying to focus my time on getting my book, if not done, to a better place. I was really hoping to have it done by the end of this month, but we're already at the end of the month, so maybe July or August. But I am trying to write a book, and I'm trying to do it quickly and not laboriously. But I've had a whole side writing project that came up, and I've been working on that. I probably will incorporate some of that into the book, but yeah, so that's kind of what's happening in my neck of the woods, and looking forward to another week. Well, should we start with the opening hymn? I think that might be fun. We had the prelude at the beginning, so let's have the opening hymn. And the Sunday Night Potluck is my little homage to my childhood and going to night church and remembering the hymns so fondly. So here tonight, we are going to have for our hymn, I Have Decided to Follow Jesus.
I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back.
Who remembers this one?
The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. No turning back, no turning back. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. No turning back, no turning back. Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? No turning back, no turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back, no turning back, no turning back. There's no turning back, no turning back.
Who remembers that song? I remember that song from my childhood. When I was looking it up yesterday, when I was getting my stuff together, found out about the backstory of the song. Someone's commenting about it. It's really interesting little backstory. I almost played it, but I'm like, is this really true? This is a true story. I don't know. It seems very fantastical. I don't know. If anyone knows if it's really a true story and not just on YouTube, that would be great. I love this lyric. Though none go with me, still I will follow. That's such a great line. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Hopefully that is your heart today. So what do you do when you notice something troubling, a troubling teaching coming into your church? What do you do exactly? Run around with your hair on fire? Like, seriously, what do you do? I get this question a lot. I want to play a little clip from the MAVEN parent podcast. My friend Alisa Childers was a guest on the podcast recently, which is a podcast you should go subscribe to, by the way, the MAVEN parent podcast, especially if you're a younger parent and you need godly wisdom and advice from some veteran parents who have raised 5 children. Go check out the MAVEN parent podcast. If you don't have young children, if you're not a young parent, if you're a grandparent, share it with your kids. Might be a helpful resource for them. I've said before on the show that it's the podcast I needed when I was a young parent. I didn't know it. So, anyways, they ask Alisa on the podcast to explain some red flags for when progressive Christianity is coming into a local church. And she starts off with like, well, there could be the obvious signs that progressive Christianity is coming into your church if they're hanging a BLM flag out front or a pride flag out in front. But then she makes a sort of like 1-minute side comment. And I want to talk about the side comment. I don't want to talk about the main question. I just want to talk about the side comment. Because I thought it was so interesting. And I'm like, oh, I feel like there's a whole podcast just in the side comment there. But let me play the side comment, and then we're going to talk about it.
The issue that I think is more concerning and more subtle for a lot of Christians is I think everybody needs to reckon with the fact that there's a little bit of progressive Christianity probably in every church. And the reason I say that is because we have social media, because people are being discipled by influencers, because people take in a lot of their sermons even from online. They might attend their church, but they have their 2 or 3 favorite pastors they like to listen to throughout the week. So they're being discipled from a lot of different places. So you can actually have a church that is theologically solid. Every elder, every teaching pastor is solid as a rock, but your small groups could be going off the rails because your small group leader is influenced by some progressive pastor that he doesn't even know is progressive, that he watches and listens to every week because he sounds super merciful and he's very kind and wants to promote inclusion and all these words that sound good. And so that can start infiltrating. So the red flags you're going to want to look for.
Okay. I think this is such a great insight because, like I said, I get people who message me, text me if they have my phone number all the time with this question of like, what are the red flags I should look for? But more importantly, like, what should I do? Like, I've noticed something, now what? And I think this is such a great insight because many people will have this storyline of like, hey, I go to this really great church. The pastor seems very solid. The worship seems good. The songs they pick are doctrinally sound. My pastor doesn't say questionable things. I love my church. But all of a sudden, my small group leader is promoting the Enneagram. Or my pastor is really solid, but all of a sudden, he's starting to quote John Mark Comer from the pulpit. What should I do? I go to a Bible-believing church, but our worship pastor showed up wearing a BLM shirt on stage. Now what do I do? Okay, these are genuine scenarios, okay? And so I think we need to take to heart Alisa's comment that to some degree, every church probably has some progressive Christianity in it. Now that may seem shocking because, I've talked a lot on this stream before of like how to vet a church. I have entire videos and trainings on how to vet a church, what to look for, and all of that. But I think she's right. I think Alisa is absolutely correct that it is quite likely that every church has some amount of progressive Christianity in it. And if you're like, well, what do you mean by that? Because here's the thing, in the real world, our people are being discipled by all kinds of influences and sources. It's not like it was in the 1970s and 80s when our pastor was the primary person who was discipling us. Sure, we might hear J. Vernon McGee come on the radio at noon on our local radio station, or we might catch a Chuck Swindoll message on the local radio station. But for the most part, people were discipled by their pastors. But today, with podcasting and social media being so omnipresent, just everywhere, people today, our small group leaders, our Sunday school teachers, our children's Sunday school teachers, are being discipled by who knows who, their favorite YouTuber, okay? And this is why I have a disclaimer, in fact, right on my website, that I am not your pastor. Like, I want you to enjoy my content. That's awesome. But I am a strong believer in the local church. So go to your church. Here's what it says right on my website on the About page. It says, Krista is a strong believer in the ministry of the local church, encourages followers of her ministry to be known by their elders. She is not a pastor, elder, priest, or bishop. She holds no ecclesiastical authority. Her teaching is intended, well, there's a typo. I better fix that after the stream. Her teaching is intended to be a supplement for local church discipleship, not a substitute for it. And then I have an article. I have a whole article about how your favorite YouTuber is not your pastor, okay? Because our orientation these days is to, when we need wisdom, what do? We often Google it. We go to the wisdom of Google, or we go try to see if our favorite YouTuber has a video about this topic. We follow influencers, all right? So when you go to church, you don't know what is shaping your Sunday school teacher. And so it is easy for me to conceive that Alisa is absolutely right. There is some progressive Christianity even in solid Bible believing churches. Okay. This is the just the omnipresence of the internet. All right. So if you hear something and you think that's a little sideways, first of all, don't be shocked. Okay. And I personally would love to see more pastors think about having a designated page on the church's public website of like pre-approved, pre-vetted voices, so that if people want guidance on apologetics or science apologetics, or they want guidance on race issues, justice issues, cultural apologetics, or counsel, like just broad biblical information related to marriage and family and career and all of that kind of thing. If the elder team could pre-approve a list that the elders could then point people to, that would be awesome, because then people would know, like, oh, these are the things that my pastor things might be good for me. They might have good information on it, like a pre-vetted voices. But so let's talk about some practicals. What should you do when you hear somebody say something sideways? Your women's director, your small group leader, one of the pastors, or just anybody on the staff, or a volunteer. Like, a youth volunteer gives some really bad advice to one of your teenagers. Like, what do you do? Well, my first tip is don't jump to conclusions. Most importantly, do not panic. Don't run around like your hair is on fire. Don't jump to conclusions. All right. Start off, take a deep breath, believe the best about the other person, at least in a preliminary fashion, and assume that they want to be faithful to the Bible until you have clear evidence to the contrary. Love, the Christian conception of love is not easily angered, it says in 1 Corinthians 13. But it also rejoices in the truth, and it always trusts, and it always hopes. So first of all, first step, don't jump to conclusions, don't jump to assumptions. Try to calm down, take a deep breath, assume the best, and start getting in a mind space of, okay, how will I look into this? All right. Number 2 is go to the source. Don't gossip about it with others. Okay. Don't start recruiting people into your concern. All right. You could ask questions quietly at home. If your husband is a wise person, go talk to them, get a second opinion. Hey, I heard this. Do you think I'm reading too much into that? What are your thoughts? Have you ever noticed that? That's a great possibility. If that's not a possibility, maybe consider getting some wise counsel from a godly person who is totally outside of the situation. All right. Somebody who's not going to have a bunch of emotional attachments to the people involved, can offer some objectivity, but also offer you objectivity that maybe you're jumping to conclusions. Maybe they would have some ideas for how to research things. Okay. But again, just don't start doing the I'm concerned tour to all your friends in the small group. Like, that will probably harm relationships. You don't want to do that. And potentially bring unnecessary division if your concern turns out to, in fact, not be the case. So what you want to do is go to the source. Have conversations directly with those you believe are saying progressive, sympathetic things, or boosting people that you think, that's kind of concerning. I'm not sure where they're going with that. The best person to offer clarity is the person who actually said the thing. Okay. So that's number 2. Number 3 is go ask for clarity. Ask questions. Now think of this a bit ahead of time. There is a good chance that if you're in a good Bible believing church, that this person is using, maybe they're using terms and ideas that they're not fully aware of all of the backstory and the implications. They're just using some terms that they heard on a podcast, and they might not really know what those terms mean. They start using the words like white privilege or promoting the Enneagram or something, boosting John Mark Comer. So what you want to do is go ask for a definition and ask, what do you appreciate about this person's work? Like, I heard you use the word white privilege the other day in a sermon. How are you defining that? How are you understanding that? And how would you support that using scripture? You want to try to probe, how well has this person really thought this through? Is this just a vague idea that they've heard and they've picked up on and kind of incorporated into their vocabulary? Or they really research this and they're really married to it and they're like really far down the road? Okay. You could ask, I heard you promote John Mark Comer in our small group. Well, what do you appreciate about his work? Try to get the person to specifically explain their beliefs. And also allow that the other person, even if they're a pastor, is in their own learning process potentially. Allow room for them to make mistakes. Again, don't start running around like your hair is on fire. Don't start gossiping about it. Go ask some questions. Pray about it, calm down, take some deep breaths, all of that. And all right. So the first one was don't jump into assumptions. Go to the source. Ask clarifying questions. Number 4 is then talk to the church leadership. If you've had the appropriate conversations, and if you truly believe that, wow, this person's really committed to this idea and they've read the books and they mean to promote this potentially dangerous idea or voice, then I would say first of all, hopefully you and your husband are on the same page, but bring your concerns to the church or the leadership of the church, or have your husband bring the concerns to the church leadership. Because pastors can't be experts on everything. Chances are they don't know what you're talking about. They haven't listened to the podcast. Okay. Most pastors can't keep up with every cultural trend. They're just trying to prepare their sermons and do pastoral counseling for families in crisis and prevent people from getting divorced and unnecessarily, and helping people with their wayward children. Like, the pastor's plate is very, very full. They are probably not as up to speed on whatever your concern issue is as you are, especially if you've watched a lot of content or read some of the primary sources. The chances are you could get in that conversation and realize, oh, actually, I kind of know more about this than you do. So again, have grace, and allow for room for someone to make mistakes and be in their own process of learning, including your own pastor. But when you get into the conversation with the church leadership, recognize that they might not be able to differentiate between solid biblical teaching and progressive leaning, progressive onboarding, as I sometimes call it, and whatnot. You might actually know some of those details more than they do. Because many pastors are fairly unaware of progressive Christianity and the framework and the terminology. Yeah, they're aware of, like, oh, we're not like the church that hangs out the BLM flag in the front. We're not like that. But they don't know a lot of the nuances and things that Alisa talks about that brings people down a road of getting to the point where there's a BLM flag out in the front. Okay. So continue to try to think the best of your church leadership, try to support them as much as possible, but also be prepared that they may not be completely aware of everything. And you might have to help them walk a road a little bit, you and or your husband. And then you have to be thinking in your mind, like, what am I going to do if they are completely unaware of things? And this brings me to my fifth tip is offer resources. Have things in your mind that you can recommend to them as book level treatments, or at least article level treatments that are fair and balanced, and like, don't send them to like some extreme discernment site, but try to help them with good resourcing, because the conversation about progressive Christianity and things like critical theory is very complicated. It can be very overwhelming for pastors. So help them equip themselves. Say, here's some additional information, or provide them with solid biblical alternatives to the good thing that they are trying to do, an alternative to the progressive leaning resource. Okay. So have some things in mind where you can be part of the solution, not just engaging in a bunch of complaining. All right. And so those are my tips of what to do if you just notice all of a sudden, like, something's a little sideways here. Now, you might have to think about, as you go down this road, what am I going to do if it's looking like, oh, my pastors not only know who these people are, these voices I'm concerned about, but they're boosting them with intentionality. Then what does that mean? And that's where you and your husband, God willing, are going to have to really be on the same page with each other about moving forward. Because is it worth it to leave your church just because there's kind of one kind of wonky woman who leads one of the small groups? Is it worth uprooting your kids from an otherwise great youth group experience because of one wonky person? Like, you're going to have to weigh out the pros and cons, and to understand it in this day and age, there is likely progressive Christianity in every church to some degree. And you can, I would say, aim to be part of the solution, resource yourself, bring good evidence, bring good resources, be informed. Don't rely just on discernment sites. Do your own research. This is a great comment. Jane says, it's such a fantastic reminder of how vital prayer is, and humbling, because sometimes I imagine myself as coming in to be this important spiritual guide, and God's like, thanks, but I got this. Yeah. Like, this is a kind of a fine line to walk, really, in when you notice these things. Is, pray first, make sure that you are praying a lot, pray for discernment, talk to your husband, get godly counsel. But also know that you are not the chair of discernment in your church. Like, God has not put you in that place. He has the elders there to do that. Now, they might be struggling, they might not be as up to speed as you think that you are about certain issues, but that's where you can potentially, you and or your husband with you, can help walk a road with that leadership to see if there's a willingness for them to get up to speed and maybe get some help and provide some support, and again, be part of the solution. All right, second topic that I want to talk about tonight. There's a ethos that I notice a lot these days, especially, like, I feel like millennials and Gen Z, to some degree, my generation as well, but maybe it's just I'm only tuned into it in the younger generations, but sort of this libertarian kind of attitude of, if something doesn't impact my life, then who cares? Live and let live. Let people live whatever kind of way they want. As long as it doesn't impact me, who cares? Who cares what other people are doing? I've even heard my own children say this, and I was like, okay, we gotta talk about this, because this is not a Christian posture. This is not the way. Maybe ask your kids if they've ever heard this saying or what their thoughts are about it. If it doesn't impact me, then it doesn't really matter. Who cares? Let's let people live their lives. In my opinion, this is a profoundly unchristian point of view. This is not how moral standards work, like, not even a little. Like, we don't say that about, well, human trafficking, it doesn't really impact my life. I'm not using porn. It doesn't really impact me. So, whatever. What? We don't think like that about that. We don't say, oh, child abuse. Well, as long as it's not my child, or it's not me as a child, well, meh. Just, let people do what they want to do. Baby murder, same thing. Well, people can kill their children in the womb. It's okay, as long as it doesn't impact my life. Wait, what? That's not how that works. And so, instead of raising a bunch of libertarians, Christian parents really should aim to raise morally clear and courageous children, people who can discern right from wrong and stand up for it, because God expects his people to have clarity and to stand up for right and wrong when it's needed. And so I want to talk about a recent example of that. I don't want to get into the politics of all of this, but I do want to use this as an example of and then I'm gonna circle back to parenting, okay, after the example. But I don't know if you've been following the drama around Major League Baseball. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago on the show, I'm a pretty big baseball fan. And Johnny Root, who is a Christian guy on X, he used to work at TPUSA Faith and then had a very public parting of the ways with them. But he made this post recently about last season on the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw, who was a pitcher on the Dodgers, pretty prominent player, wrote for Pride Month, on the Pride Month uniform, he wrote Genesis 9:12-16 as a Bible verse on his hat. And it was sort of his way of quietly protesting that he was being forced to wear the Pride uniform. And so this was his kind of silent protest of saying, hey, I see the whole rainbow thing differently. And I'm not in total agreement of this, but I'm trying to feign compliance here, okay? And then on the Pride nights for the Dodgers again, I guess Dodgers are one of the only teams. There's two teams that special Pride uniforms. There's Dodgers and the Giants. And there was a Dodger who did the same thing this season, wrote the Bible verse on his cap. Then there was another Dodger who just opted out of the Pride uniform and he wore the regular cap. And then there were three people on the San Francisco Giants who wrote the Bible verse on their caps. There were three pitchers on the Giants who did the same thing. And, it's a sensitive issue. And it caused a lot of X soap opera level drama. I'll put it that way. And the Major League Baseball then responded with, hey, this violates our uniform policy. We don't allow the defacing of our uniforms. And that's what this is. So here's a little short commentary by John Root about this issue.
On Monday, Major League Baseball said Bible verses on Pride hats will not be tolerated. In response to the three Christian San Francisco Giants pitchers who wrote Bible verses on their Pride hats, Chief Communications Officer for Major League Baseball said this: "The writing on the cap violates our rules. Inconsistent with normal practice. We have warned the players about future violations." In my opinion, Major League Baseball is in dangerous territory. This looks more like forced conformity than anything. For a league so focused on inclusion, they are excluding Christian players from expressing their faith. For a league that preaches tolerance, they are very intolerant to Christian messaging. No Christian athlete should ever be forced or coerced into supporting something that goes against their faith and goes against their values. I think the best response would be every single Christian Major League Baseball player to write a Bible verse on his hat today. And don't worry about the fine. Rob Snyder is going to take care of it for you. This is a time for Christians to take a stand. And I think more than anything, we need to be done with Pride Nights.
Okay. So that is John Root, ladies and gentlemen. I had the pleasure of meeting him once and being interviewed by him when he was working at TPOSA. He's a very nice guy. So anyways, through all this drama, I'm watching this on X and I'm like, I wonder if this is something or nothing. And so I reached out to an acquaintance who's friendly with us at the ministry, and he's a First Amendment attorney. And I asked him, like, is this really religious discrimination, or is this just a uniform violation? Like, is this something or nothing? Are they just being overly sensitive, or what? And he was like, oh yeah, it's absolutely a First Amendment issue. It's religious discrimination. They should get lawyers and everything. I was like, oh, okay. I thought maybe that was a plausible story, that they're just, having a uniform policy. And so, no, he thought that there were some inconsistencies, and with some things that in the past that MLB has allowed, and that kind of thing. So anyways, I don't want to do a deep dive on all of that. But then the Arizona Diamondbacks had a player who kind of commended these players for their courage.
A lot of the hate comes from perceived negativity, and without getting too off track, but like the Pride Night stuff with the Giants, like I think that there's a perceived negativity with this stuff of like, okay, Landon Routt wrote a verse on his hat, that means that he's anti something. That doesn't mean that, right? It means that he's pro something, right? So the rainbow means something to him. It means that he believes in the Noahic covenant being something that's special to us as Christians, right? That means that no matter how bad we possibly could be, no matter how much we reject God, that he will never again flood the earth. That's really cool. That's really special. And we do a lot of stuff, and we're all sinful. We all do a lot of stuff that may be worthy of a flooding, but God will never flood us, and because of that promise, and his promises are unconditional. So that's something that's really cool to me, is that there's nothing negative, there's nothing anti, there's nothing that says that he doesn't support anything, or that he's like hateful or anything like that at all. It's all positive. It's all like, man, this is what the rainbow means to me. And I just thought that was really cool that he did that.
So that was his take on it. I think he was trying to be very diplomatic and say, I'm not anti anything. What he didn't say was, hey, I'm kind of representing a more conservative Christian perspective, more historical perspective. But that was this pitcher's way of saying something, and God bless him for trying to, say something in public on camera to the news media of like, hey, here's my take on this. And I think that, someone's making a comment in the chat that I would think that the logo itself is compelled speech. And that's really what it seems like it's boiling down to right now. Because after this whole situation, then MLB backed off, and they kind of said, they backtracked a little bit and said that made it more plain. Let me put it that way, that players can opt out of the special uniforms. I'm not sure that the players were totally knowing that. I don't know. Maybe they knew that. I would be curious if they knew that. But, and again, I don't want to get into all the legalities of it, because that's not the point of this conversation. But when I saw this meme posted by Johnny Root, I thought, yeah, that gets at something. I want to talk about that. For those of you on the podcast, I'll describe it. It's kind of, think of like Daniel or the three Hebrew children described in the book of Daniel, and how they didn't bow down to the statue. And so you have the big golden statue wearing a San Francisco Giants pride hat. And then there's three guys, there's all these people bowing down to it, and three Giants players not bowing down. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell. Is, do you have the courage to, first of all, do you have the discernment to notice the problem of like, this seems like compelled speech, it goes against my conscience, which are some of the pillars of the classical Western worldview, which I would argue is rooted and grounded in the Christian faith. And try to help me remember so I can circle back to that as to why that is. But the thing here is that these players had the discernment, And then the creativity and the wherewithal of like trying to say, hey, this violates my conscience. Try to do it peacefully. Nobody was screaming. Nobody was getting beat up. It was just, I'm going to do this little thing. I'm going to write a Bible verse on my hat, or I'm not going to wear the hat. I'm going to wear the regular hat. And that was it. Peaceful display of their conscience. But can you imagine, like, if the situation was a different religion and they were saying, hey, before you play baseball, we're going to have a mandatory meal before you play baseball. We're all going to eat pork. Wait, what? Like, if you're an Orthodox Jew, that might not work out for you so well. Or if you're a Muslim, that might not work out for you so well. And you really think that they're going to compel those groups to, you must eat the pork? Well, if you don't eat the pork, then you're anti-Christian. You're anti this. No, I don't want to eat pork. It violates my religion. It violates my conscience. I'm not going to eat the pork. No, there would be a religious accommodation for those people. And I think that what we have to think about is when we are raising our children to be courageous, we have to also raise them to be discerning. We need courage with discernment so that they can recognize the problem, they can recognize the thing, but then that they can also think in their minds of, how am I going to respond? And we're going to really have to disciple our kids, because so many things in the culture are now telling them, like, hey, political violence, like 33% of Gen Z thinks political violence is acceptable. What makes us think that our Christian children won't get caught up in that error? And so we want to be talking to them about, look, if you notice something or you feel like you're being compelled to do something that violates your faith and who Jesus says that we are to be and what we are to do, it's okay to say no. You don't have to beat anyone up. You don't have to yell. But let's think through, like, what would an appropriate response be? And so I think that we want to teach our children that even the heroes of the Bible weren't just go along to get along kind of people all the time. Yes, they were a lot of times, like, we should be meek and lowly like Jesus, but sometimes we're going to have to stand up and be like the 3 Hebrew children, okay? And sometimes we're going to have to do hard things and be the only one not bowing. And even when there's consequences, even when people call us names, give your kid permission ahead of time. Like, hey, if you get suspended or if you get kicked out of school, it's okay. The main thing I want you to know is to stand up for things that go against your faith. But if we're going to raise courageous children who are discerning and have a moral compass, we're going to have a lot of very specific conversations with them. But we also want to be displaying that and modeling that in our own behavior as adults. We want to show them the kind of adult that we want them to grow up to be. And that begins with us as parents. So we have to be willing to be inconvenienced, or we have to be willing to weigh out the consequences. And when I am constantly just doing the go along, get along thing, what am I showing to my kid about what's going to happen? Because if I'm constantly doing that, then don't be surprised if that's what your kid does. So if you want your kid to be courageous and grow up and be somebody like that is in a very public position and doesn't bow the knee, then that starts with you weighing out in your life, hey, is there things that I'm just always going along to get along? Now, some days it's like, I don't have time. I don't have time to go to jail today. Monique always says that when we fly, like, I don't have time to go to jail today. I can't fight for this this stupid person in the airport. I'm just going to let them have it. I'm just going to let them have their way and do whatever, because I don't have time to deal with this. But when our kids are watching, sometimes we have to do the hard thing and say, like, hey, I'm going to do this thing and I might get fined. I might need to get some help. I might need to get legal help. And then show them, like, sometimes it's worth the hassle. And I think I've mentioned this before. Like, one of the things I did with my kids when they were growing up is I just told them, like, look, someday when the world is very, very progressive, I'm a public person. I have a channel where I say a lot of things that are out of step with the culture. And if they ever start rounding up the Christians, they're going to come for me first. And I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to delete my videos. I'm not going to be ashamed of the things I've said. And someday when the culture gets progressive and they start rounding up Christians, I know I'm going to be among the first or second wave of people that they will be rounding up. I expect that. And I told my kids, I counted the cost and this is what I'm doing. And just let them know, like, this is what's up. This is what time it is. And so I think that it's just important to think about, how am I raising a child to go against the culture? Because the culture is pretty much demonic at this point. I mean, there's so many things coming at our kids all the time. And I don't care where they go to school, like homeschooling, private school, public school, like there's demonic forces and ideas coming at them all the time. But we're going to have to help them have a moral compass so much stronger, so many more intentional discussions than our parents probably had to have with us. Like, when I was growing up, being rebellious was like drinking, and being too moral and not being overly explicit with boys. Like, those were the things that we worried about. But, they weren't taking pictures of body parts and sending them to strangers and doing the level of stuff that we're doing that young people have to face now. And I think it's just really just a lot different. And there's so much more influences and so much orders of magnitude more things happening now. And so Christian parents are going to have to be very, very intentional about helping our children to develop moral discernment, but also to stand up courageously, and almost kind of helping them know that thing, to build that into them from the beginning, from as early as possible. That in this family, we don't look to the culture for our cues for how to act. We will be different in this family. We will do different things. We will make different decisions so that they get accustomed to being different. So that when they grow up to be an adult, they're like, oh, yeah, now that I'm making my own decisions, I'm going to raise my children differently. I'm going to be different. So those are my thoughts about that. Thank you so much for watching the Sunday Night Potluck. I hope you enjoyed the conversations. Please share this out with friends and family, your pastoral team, your small group leader, and introduce people to the podcast. And tomorrow or Tuesday, I'll be dropping part 3 of my series on conspiracy theories. I hope you'll go check that out if you're following that series, and that you'll find it helpful. You'll share it out. And with that, I hope you have a good week. Grace and peace, everyone.